which is an absolutely smart.
Bless you all. So, yeah.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Georgette Steffens. I'm the chairperson of the Albany 4th District Commission, and I'd like to welcome you to our September 23rd meeting. At this time, we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves.
Joe Coffey, Commissioner.
Tom Tagliano, Commissioner.
Lynn Zaranda, CFO for hire.
Jim Teller, Security.
Dave Williams, Security for the Port.
Tony Vassell, Maritime Business Development Manager.
Megan Daly, Economic Development Procurement.
Christine Studo, CFO, Albany Port Commission.
Patrick Jordan of the Ports Council.
Richard Hendricks, CFO. CEO.
You're not a CFO.
I didn't last a month.
The meeting was too long.
I've said about reasonable suspicion. No cookies for you.
Well, so speaking of that, we are thrilled to welcome Christine as our new CFO. And so thank you for the work that you've already been doing, which I know Jill will go into shortly.
Thank you.
But so welcome. So in your packet, everyone should have received a copy of the August 14th minutes of our last commission meeting. If there's no changes or questions, I'll take a motion to approve.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second? All in favor? Thank you. And so I will turn it over to our trustee treasurer for our finance committee update.
We had a finance committee meeting this morning. Again, I just wanted to commend Christine and working with Lynn for putting together a good document for us to review in advance of the meeting. We talked a little bit about the financial performance here to date of the port. We're running a little bit light on the revenue, but the port folks have managed the expense side accordingly, so we are in the place that we expected that we would be. And we've done some forecasting out to year end, and we'll just manage ourselves through the end of the year. It's been a little slow on the water side. We also looked at the draft of the proposed 2020 budget, went through some items. One thing I did like that Christine has done is that they've set up budget goals, objectives with a metric for many of the key items. The narrative that accompanied the proposed budget I thought was was very well detailed. There were several items about revenue assumptions related to both the land side and the maritime side. And we also looked at some expense assumptions, talked about the number of employees we have, looking at potentially one new employee on the BD side. Related almost on a categorical perspective, each of the lines in the budget for 2020. And I think at this point, there were not any particular questions. We just spent a little time on some of the ones that have some different variances from where we were on the proposed 2019 year end. There was nothing in there that was surprising. There was some discussion about depreciation going up with all the capital improvements that we've made. And we do have an operating gross margin that's in the black, but as we look at some of the below the line numbers, we might go in the red a little bit. But I think at this point, the one thing we did ask our CFO to look at with the staff is what would be some of the risks that would be associated with the revenue on the 2020 budget. But I think at this point, Finance Committee is looking to recommend to the board that we release the budget for public review. And the other item that we looked at, we did look at the investment policy for the port, and then based on feedback we had from our investment advisor, from our financial advisors, we're not looking to make any changes in the investment policy at this time. And that was the salient business of our finance committee.
It was a good discussion, I think.
It was.
Had by all. So, anything anyone wants to add to that? Thank you, Joe. So at this point, I'll turn it over to our CEO for their update. Rich.
Thank you. As I reported last month, I was invited to that Block Island wind, offshore wind tour. We attended that on August 15th. It was a enlightening tour just for the to see the size of the equipment that is involved and how every piece of it works. Met with some of the important players in the field, and since then we've been continuing discussions on our proposals for our new land development and how we can assist in the development of the offshore wind here in New York State and along the East Coast. On the 5th and 6th of September, I met with Federal Marine and their parent company, FedNav. We had discussions about the increase in the terminal operating agreement as they expand into our new wharf section and the Ro-Ro. The staff has been heavily involved in the town planning board meetings on our expansion. We're, as I've said before, well into the final scope of that. As a follow-up to that, this Wednesday we're meeting with representatives from New York State DEC just to address a couple questions that came up as questions in the public hearing. October 7th to the 10th, we will be attending the Break Bulk Conference with the intent of developing new maritime business going forward. We have a booth this year at the function, which is attended by between 2,000 and 3,000 people. We'll have representatives at that booth at all times to discuss business opportunities here at the port with major shipping companies and freight forwarders. The later in the agenda, the Association of Port Authorities Conference is coming up, and I will be representing the port as well as the North Atlantic region of the Association of Port Authorities. We had a visit with the U.S. Coast Guard twice in the past few months. Both have gone very well. We're in the process of having our independent audit done on the facility security plan, which is up for renewal. It's a 5-year renewal. It's up in December. As part of that audit and plan of our facility security plan, we're having an emergency drill next week on Monday. We've contacted all of the tenants and have asked for at least 2 representatives from each of our tenant organizations to respond to the drill. So far, we've had positive feedback from every one of them that they will be here and willing to participate. And on October 11th, the port will be hosting the opening of the Chamber of Commerce Tech Valley Leadership 2020 class. We hosted them last year, and they've requested to come back again. We're tentatively scheduled for the DEC building. They've got a very large class this year, and we'll after the opening of it, we'll offer some tours and insight and information as to how the port operates, and we've had a lot of good feedback in the past from the attendees. So we continue to market the port to all sectors of the business community.
I think that's, so I am a graduate of their program, and it was, part of why I did it was because my focus is so Albany focused, and I really wanted to learn about the region. And to me, the best part of that class was the tours that we got to take and really see what was happening in the region. And it was lawyers, bankers, manufacturing. I mean, it really was a wide group of people, so it's a great, and I was much younger then, And I went through the class, so they're young leaders, right? So it's a really great opportunity, I think, for us to talk about what we're doing here, and you never know where these folks may go in their career paths. So I'm glad we're involved. It's great.
And it is a big class, for sure.
How big is that?
Oh, God, that'd be 40 people, of course. It was the biggest one I've seen.
Yeah.
Rich, what were the two issues that DEC was talking about as a result of the public?
During the public comment period, there were some questions that were asked and requested to be addressed as to the truck traffic that would be leaving and how we would control that. We have our traffic studies and everything have brushed over it. We're working with Steve to refine it. Pat has been closely working with that as to how to include it in just one section so that all of the questions are answered in one section of the paper, not, or our response, not C, section 2B, section 4. It's going to be concise and hopefully addressed all at once so that if anybody has any question as to what our plans are with the trucks, they'll be able to see it concise in one spot, not at the circle.
And so most of the questions about the truck traffic, is that?
There were very few questions. I mean, there were maybe 5 or 6 public comments altogether, and 2 of them, to say they were negative would be exaggerating. It was simply, we'd like to look at this intersection one more time, or it's a lot of trucks. It could be a lot of trucks. We don't know. We don't know what the project is. So it's more of a general, as opposed to the usual complaint of coming in and someone saying, you can't have 300 units here.
Well, so with truck traffic, what was the other issue?
I don't know if there were 2. We have to look at we want a little closer look at the error studies that have happened, but that was from one of the engineers that's on the board. I think she just asked Steve. We know there's the report, you talked about the report, pulled out a report and put it into the document itself, just explain this level's okay, this level's okay. Kind of walk the board through it.
Air emissions are a pretty typical question.
Right.
Board operations anyway.
So, yeah, we weren't surprised, but.
Not as typical. Thank you.
And the other questions that did come out of that were very positive towards the project.
Just to keep going on that, because it was going to be an update and a development update, that we reached a major step though, that the planning board accepted the draft generic environmental impact statement as complete, and the public comment period is now complete, and now we're tasked with the final GEIS. Our goal, our hope is that the approvals will come within 60 days, if not sometime before the end of this year. At the same time of doing this, we're having a number of business development meetings related to the site, like Richard mentioned, probably about a dozen or so pretty detailed business development meetings. The majority of them are offshore wind related companies, which is pretty exciting. There's a couple other notes that I put in this page related to activity that we've been doing. Another step that we've done is this past week we submitted a major grant application to Federal Maritime for port infrastructure grant work for the 80 acres. We're hoping that we find out about that likely the beginning of next year.
Who was that submitted to?
It was submitted to MARAD for the Port Infrastructure Grant Program, which was a small amount of funding nationwide, but projects had to be at least $10 million for the request, so we submitted a pretty healthy application. And just a couple other steps we've been taking related to the port expansion work. Our next step that we'd like to do before or concurrent with this approval process would be actually to put an RFI out related to design and permitting on the expansion. related to access points, bridge, the access roads and the internal roads. And RFI would be a general outreach related to teams that could provide information on doing that work, so we would be in good shape in terms of taking next steps and also showing this industry that we're taking those next steps. We've also talked internally here a little bit about doing an RFI related to permitting and or 30% design work related to the heavy wharf, because the wharf, if it is an offshore wind related company or companies that go there, the wharf needs are so specific, and we've already had some level of details with some of these companies. So that is something that we're talking internally at this time.
Is there value to have bifurcate those two RFIs as opposed to having one?
I thought that there was value and that there would be specialties may be different of the firms and the level of response that they may provide. Do you see it otherwise?
No, I guess we'll see when we get the responses. That may actually alter our thought after you see the responses,
That's true.
to see a response from
I think that's it. There's a couple other notes there related to other general economic development work. We've had some interest in other property that the court has on South Grove Street, but that's still in the process.
Does anyone have any questions for Rich or Megan?
No.
Thank you for continuing to push such a large project forward.
Thank you.
All right, took my glasses off and now I can't see. The port is oftentimes supports nonprofits that are engaged in maritime activities, promoting the history of maritime, and so before you, we have a request to sponsor the 2019 USS Slater Night in the amount not to exceed $5,000. I know, was it this specific event, or we sponsored their anniversary?
It was this specific in 18, yes.
And so this, goes in line with the program that we do as Historic Jerry Hill and the like. When was the actual? It's before December 31st.
I move that we adopt resolution 14/2019.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we appreciate
The event is October 17th, it's a Thursday evening.
So we appreciate all the work that the Slater does, and all their volunteers. I know they have a lot of volunteers. All right, so we'll turn it over to Tony. As we've heard in our financial reports, it seems like August was a slow month, but Tony's going to go through that for us now.
Thank you, Chairperson Stevens. We're going to go January through August this year versus last year. There's going to be a slight departure from previous reporting ways. Is in the past talked about ships and barges and then about tonnage. We're going to combine them both at the same time. First of all, overall ships and barges this year 20, last year 51, down 31 for 61%. The tonnage is at 238,000 for last year, 140,000 this year, down almost 100,000 or 41%. Now, we'll go into covering our specific market commodities or specific markets. First of all, heavy lift project cargo. Last year 31, this year 9, down 22 ships or 71%. Tonnage is down from 32,000 down to 3,800, 28,000 or 88%. And as mentioned on a number of occasions, Last year, we had two major projects, the Cricket Valley and the Fairview. What's going on now, and I'm going to quote an individual by the name of Chris Michael, who's Vice President of Global Specialized Services. He said, "Sourcing decisions are in a state of flux. Dealing with uncertainty is proving to be a challenge to all in the project cargo industry." And we're seeing that. Also, another comment was container lines are bringing in teams to focus on project cargo shipments in an effort to take a share of the project cargo business. So this is in the particular markets, the container carriers are trying to pull a share of that market. And what does it look like for next year in the heavy lift project cargo? Next year, we have two major projects we're looking at. The one in Ohio that has been mentioned just came out of litigation. We haven't heard anything as to exactly what and when. However, we are still positioned well. The other major one we're looking at is in north central Pennsylvania, which was originally to take place in the fourth quarter this year. And we just developed that. It looks like late first quarter next year. So that's basically in a nutshell about the heavy lift project cargo segment market, which is down substantially. The next one is scrap iron. Scrap iron, during the period, 7 vessels last year, 3 this year, down 4. Tonnage, 154,000, this year 85,000, down 70 or 45%. Indications are, or the situation is, there are depressed rates. Also, there's a depressed demand tying in with that, and we've heard that there may not be any additional scrap export shipments this year. Last year we handled 9 vessels. If that holds true, we'll handle 3 this year. And our third major market, the pulp market. That's, as I mentioned last month, the bright shining star. Last year 6 vessels, this year 7, up 1. But the tonnage is up somewhat, from 29,000 to 40,000, up 11 or 40%. And what that is ships last year averaged about 4,800 tons per vessel. This year they're averaging about 5,800 tons. Let's see, we have a vessel that came in, discharged 8,000 tons of product, and another one due in the near future with about 3,000 tons. When I was in Philadelphia last week, developed that there is a new warehouse that was, the ground was dug on 9/11 for a new 100,000 square foot warehouse in the Philadelphia area to accommodate forest products. The last time they may have had an expansion, it was a 120,000 foot warehouse in 2010. This one is 100,000, and the Philadelphia area handles over 1 million tons of forest products annually. 600,000 like in the roll, the kraft liner board, and 400,000 in the pulp. So we have more competition coming on board. And let's see, as Rich mentioned, the Break Bulk Conference coming up. This last week we had a tour of 76 people from the Penn Central Historical Society, the railroad. And when I find it, if you would, take a look at your longshore hours. And the chart down at the bottom. In the past I've mentioned about trends, and just make some comments. Take a look on the left, the red line, that is 2015, 10,272 hours. Move a little over to the right, April of 2017, the purple one, was 9,438 hours. Another high spot was the highest spot we've achieved in total longshore hours, 12,123 last May. Then in September 15, we also hit 8,200 longshore hours. And now, this last month, look down at the bottom, the black is the lowest we've ever had. So last May, and these are good, you might say, KPIs of what's going on. And the fourth quarter, generally 6,000 hours or less. So fourth quarter looks a little slow.
So, sorry, I have a question. Tony or Rich, you know, the decreases or the slowing that we're experiencing, are other ports our size experiencing that same level of decrease, right, if the market's slowing, or are ports generally seeing a decrease? Like, how do we compare to?
Well, in the heavy lift project cargo market sector, it's down all over. Within the others, like the scrap, I must admit, I'm not certain, but I just feel with the overall situation occurring worldwide, that things are down in the scrap business. In fact, an article I read recently, scrap basically confirmed what I said earlier. Prices are depressed, volumes depressed, things are slow. Other ports like us, probably not running around very happy either.
But that's not something that you know for sure. Like, I think that's something we should, like, if we're seeing a decrease, we should know.
Well, we have a general idea
us,
that,
or-
you know, and like in the scrap market, it's down. Heavy lift project cargo, it's down. Forest products, also, there's a worldwide slowdown in that. So, you know, if you apply that, you know, basically, they're slow in other areas. I know Philly is slow,
Yeah.
and,
That's what you factor of how diversified your business is too.
Right. Yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, thank you, Tony. Is there any other business?
I had one sheet made to submit there to the delegate for the AEP convention.
Yes, we do that every year. Right, so each year we need to officially designate Rich as our representative at the AAPA annual convention, the American Association of Port Authorities. So I need a motion delegating Rich Hendrick as our delegate of the Albany Port District Commission to the 2019 annual convention of the American Association of Port Authorities. Second, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Sure. I don't think there's any items for executive session. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 23rd at 12:30. So if there's no other,
We have a finance committee meeting before that.
Yes.
So that would be 11:30.
so if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So